everybody. Scott back with you on the record player. Today we are joined by a Grammy nominated, Juno winning member of the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, where he was inducted in 2018, along with his former bandmates in the Barenaked Ladies. He's just wrapped up a string of shows opening for legendary rockers The Who while supporting his brand new record, Excelsior. I am thrilled today to be joined by Mr. Steven Page. How are you, Steven?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. You and I were supposed to hook up a couple of weeks ago while you were in the UK.
Mm,
You were under the weather a little bit. I hope you've had some chicken soup and orange juice and you feel better.
I did. I had that thing that they're saying is not COVID that's going around, but I think it felt a lot like COVID to me. But whatever they say, it's not because when
Clear.
I wasn't testing positive, so I'm going to say it wasn't.
Well, there's a bit of a cold going around here too, so you
That's what
might
it
have
was.
been.
It was
You might have
bad.
been.
It was bad.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty bad. I've heard that it's actually worse than people that had COVID back in. um, I want to try and touch on as much stuff as I can in the time that we have.
Yeah,
Let's start with the new album, which I haven't stopped listening to. It is fantastic. It's called Excelsior.
thank you.
What's the reaction been? It's been out for about a month, I think. What's the reaction been to the record so far?
It's one of those things where people who've known me or know my music for a long time have, I think I've gotten some of the nicest compliments from many of them as possible. I mean, that I've ever had, where people are like, "This is the best thing you've ever done," which is amazing because when you're making a record, I don't know. Sometimes I think I have made records and thought this is the best thing I've ever done. But for the most part, my instinct is to think, is this any good? And I really don't know until it's out in the world. I mean, I know that I'm satisfied with it. I think it might be finished. Um, and every day my feelings about it changes. So to have somebody else hold a mirror up is a nice thing, especially people whose opinion you respect. But then there are people who are like, they say, "Oh, I heard your new record." And I say, "Uh-huh," and they
Ed?
go, "That's it. That's the end of the conversation." I'm I'm guessing maybe they didn't love this one as much. I think, as I'm saying to people, it's a grower, not a shower. It starts very low energy, right? It starts with an organ and a church choir. It's at a funeral, is how it starts. Not everybody wants their Steve Page records to start that way, And but for me, it was like I really tried to make a headphone album. Those albums that you listen to, like I have great nostalgia about lying on my parents' living room floor, listening to vinyl records with my headphones on, staring at the liner notes and the pictures, and that's the kind of record I was trying to make. And I think people who listen to it that way seem to really love it.
Well, you're right about that. It starts off with the church, organ and all that stuff. The first couple of songs are a little bit. I'm expecting when I hear, "Surprise, Surprise" was one of my favorite songs that you ever did.
Right. Thank you.
And I love when the albums start off like that. But in this case, the album kind of, like you said, it started off a little bit not doom and gloomy, but a little bit slower, and then built as the album.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think the song on this record that would be the traditional opening song would be the Golden Age of Doubling Down, which
Mm.
doesn't show up until like track 8 or something of this record or somewhere there. But it's just the way that those first 7 songs on this record all kind of relate to each other. They're about loss and grieving and human connection and searching for answers and searching for connection with things other than ourselves, whether it's with the universe around us or some kind of spirituality or some kind of human connection. And they all kind of reference each other musically, so they kind of needed to be one piece. And I couldn't once I understood that, I couldn't imagine the record starting with anything except for feel.
Mhm. The first single was Zoom, which obviously tells us that the album was recorded and created during a pandemic. Tell us a little bit about this record, how it came together in comparison to your previous stuff.
Sure. I mean, I started this record, a bunch of these songs I started before the pandemic hit. And I thought when things got closed down, like many other people, I thought, great, this is my chance to finish this record. I can, now I can really hunker down and get this thing done, and it'll be done in the next month or so. And that'll be that. And just like I think everybody goes, I'm going to make the great Canadian novel. I'm going to learn to
Yeah.
bake sourdough bread and whatever. And for about 3 weeks, you start working on stuff, and then you go, what have I have no results here. Time change. The idea of time, the concept completely changed. Like every day, every 12-hour daylight day felt like 18 hours to me. But then at the end of the day, I'd be like, what did I finish?
Yeah.
Nothing. Um, and then I started doing these live streams, which was the thing I resisted for the first month or so of lockdown. I watched people on Facebook Live or whatever else doing this in front of, and having no audience to sing to. Like you're singing,
Awkward.
yeah, you're just singing into the abyss. And it was like, that looks like hell to me. And then I saw my buddy Dan Mangan was doing some concerts over Zoom, and I tuned into one, and I thought, this is amazing because you can see all the other people if they keep their cameras on, which back then we all did. Um, now I'm a little shyer, I think, than I was at the beginning of the pandemic, but we were craving that connection. So I started doing those, and it was amazing. And I still do them when I'm home on a Saturday. I've done 93 of these things so far, these live from home concerts. And they can, not only can they see me, I can see them, and they can see each other. And over the last 3 years, this has developed into a real community of people who have friendships with each other from all around the world. And a Stephen Page live from home concert for them, it's an opportunity to hear my music and connect with me and catch up, but it's also an opportunity for them to catch up with each other. And that's what the song Zoom is about how much I've resisted technology. I'm cynical about it, like I think many of us are, and I don't always think big tech has our best interests at heart. However, we were able to use these tools to our advantage and to actually create something human. There's a thing that it sounds weird, but when you're on stage, there you can kind of, if you're a seasoned performer, you can read the room just from the smell and the vibe and the sound, as far as whether a joke connects or a song really connects with an audience. Some of that is like whether they're chatting or not and that kind of thing. But I feel like I'm now able to do that over Zoom. I can tell when peripherally where people are, if they're tuning out or not, if they're like looking away. And it's almost like playing in a room with people. It's not the same, but there is this sixth sense that you start to develop. And, the song's kind of about that.
And you can still get that immediate kind of connection, right?
That's right.
You've had a #1 song on the Billboard charts, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but was exactly 24 years ago today that one week went to #1.
Wow.
You're a member of the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. You get inducted by Geddy Lee, of all people, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So that's got to be amazing. If I was you, I'd retire, buy a cottage, and go fishing every day. But you, still recording, still out on the road, and out on the road with the Who. I mean, how the hell did that happen? And what was that experience like being out
Well, we got the invitation. I don't know if it was brought to them by, I think it was brought to them, maybe Live Nation, the promoters had seen them, and my manager had been talking, whatever else. We had done a bunch of shows. The trio, Stephen Page Trio, had done a bunch of shows with the Vancouver Symphony, and people had, the Who have been touring with the symphony, and I think they kind of thought, oh, this would go well with the Who thing, even though we're not playing with the symphony when we're with the Who. There are similarities. So we went out and did 5 shows opening for them. It was just amazing. Like, for me, it was poignant because it's been a long time since I've been on an arena stage. I mean, there was a time in my life, a good probably 15 years, that I spent in arenas and backstage and in that world with that kind of crew and all that kind of stuff and that kind of schedule. So to be back in it was kind of nostalgic for me. But part of me was like, well, can I still pull this off? Especially with a trio that there's no drums, there's no bass. It's 2 guitars and a cello. And you're going up against what was once the world's loudest rock band. And people are like, how are you gonna present on this? And I thought, well, all we do when there's no drums to compete with in the sound, all you can do is you just turn it up. When you turn it up, you can really feel the hall. But it is a different style of performing, being in an arena. So the first show was hometown of Toronto, and as much as I was confident they would know a lot of the songs, you just never know if you're going to connect with that audience or not. And it was amazing. It was emotional for me and exciting. And then after that, and all the American shows after that were like gravy. And the audience response was spectacular, better than I ever could have hoped for. And the Who, I got to watch every night. So I got to see 5 Who shows in a row. I mean, that was for me, that was the greatest part. And they were so great. They sound so good. Roger is 78 and he's singing as well as he's ever sung. Like his version of Love or Rain or Me might be better than the original. Like it's more poignant, sung by an older person. It still sounds beautiful. So I just felt fortunate to be part of that, and then also just inspired to watch these guys still doing it and still caring. Like, there's a tech problem and they get mad, and it's like, well, first of all, we want to see the Who mad, and second of all, it shows me that they could have just taken the check and not cared, but they actually care about the quality of every show, and that to me is really inspiring.
It's like watching your father try and do this. I mean,
Oh yeah,
amazing they can still
it's
do it.
second nature. It's second nature to Pete, like doing that. And it's we even got the bum wiggle one night. So that was
I'm not going to be that guy who asks if there's ever a chance of a reunion, because realistically, they've gone their way, you've gone your way.
right.
You're both doing awesome separate things. So I'll only ask about the experience itself from 10 years. Well, sorry, not 10 years ago, 4 years ago now. To become a member of the Canadian Music Hall of Fame is an incredible honor. A huge accomplishment, but to have to do it in the fashion that you did it, where you're not working together or really, chit chatting much over the course of a decade.
Right.
What was that week like leading up to that, and what was that night like for you? I mean, what an experience!
It was great. I mean, I think we were both me and the other guys were probably all super stressed before it happened and nervous.
Yeah,
And we met like a couple days before to rehearse, and it was awkward a little bit, but then when they were talking about like what song to perform, and I don't know what they thought I was going to suggest, but I suspected they would expect I'd say something like, let's do Brian Wilson, because I wrote the song, I sing the song, whatever. But for me, it was like, no, the point for me was to do the songs that I had been doing live. Like I hadn't done 1 week, or If I Had $1 Million in my own shows, because to me they were duets between me and Ed.
right.
So it was a chance for me to do those again. And I think once I had suggested that I thought we'd do a medley of those 2 songs, um, I think they were a little more at ease, because it was something that could involve all of us.
Right.
And to me, that's what I thought was special about it, was not just me being with those guys, but that it was us interacting. And I had a blast doing it. But that was, to kind of answer the question you weren't going to ask. We never, apart from the odd little bit of pleasantries back and forth, I get happy birthday text or something like that. There's been no talk about it. And so I can't assume that there's ever going to be any place where we collaborate again, which is like, maybe too bad, because people enjoyed it so much, but I also understand why they wouldn't want it. So that's the way it is. I was glad we got to do it. I was glad we got to do it in a way that celebrated the history that we had together.
For fans, it's almost as if it's keeping you guys separate. You get two awesome things instead of just
Right. Yeah, you get weekends at mom's house and at dad's.
exactly. Exactly. From a songwriting standpoint, you had great chemistry with Ed. Songwriting, you had fantastic chemistry with Stephen Duffy, who I love. Big fan of his. Do you prefer writing songs with a partner? I mean, do you like having that person to bounce songs off of and that type of thing, or do you like having the responsibility of this is mine? I'm good with it.
I do like it because it presents you with a challenge, or sometimes a collaborator can show you into a different room, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
it might show you what it is you're trying to say without them even knowing what they're showing you. Like it's a word choice all of a sudden can kind of push you in a different direction. Craig Northey is the other guy who I write with a lot, and
Mhm.
he's excellent at that. And I've just started writing with Stephen Duffy again for the first time in years and years.
Good.
And yeah, we're working on a 20 years later follow up to the Vanity Project record.
Awesome.
So yeah, hopefully that'll be out in the next year or so. But I love collaborating with other people, but I've also feel like I've gotten better at writing on my own. Like for me, a lot of it was simply about lack of discipline. Like sitting in a room with somebody else forces you to finish the song.
Right.
And when you're by yourself, It's very easy to just go, "Ah, I'll finish that later." I wrote that. I got that idea down. Let's move on to something else. My attention span kind of is all over the place, and
Right.
having a collaborator can kind of focus you. Um, but like this record, Excelsior, it's the first one I've ever done where every song is a I'm the only writer on every song on the record, and I'm happy with how it turned out. So the fact that I was able to do that has kind of helped me figure out that I can do either thing, and but they are unique to each other, or to themselves rather, from each other.
I want to ask you about the Canada Loves You Back thing, which was awesome. I don't know how close you are with Ryan Reynolds, obviously close enough that they asked you to do it. This guy could run for prime minister. You could be his campaign manager, for God's sakes. How much fun did you have doing that?
It was really fun. I was thrilled to be asked to do it, but it's also totally daunting because
Well, yeah.
my mission really was to write something that was poignant and funny. And like, who does poignant and funny better than Ryan Reynolds? I mean, that is his thing. So it's like, I'm gonna do what Ryan does so well back at him and hope that he likes it. But I mean, I know that he likes my music, and we have many times where we've been able to make each other laugh privately. But in public, you want to do your best work. And for me, it's a matter of like not overthinking it. So when I finally got to see his response to it, I was relieved and thrilled that he liked it as much as he did.
Oh God, he loved it. I mean, the video that you see online of him almost tearing up, that was fantastic. Here on our show, we've had many polls over the years of what's the best cover songs of all time. It almost always ends with Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower, being number one, and it almost always ends with number two being either Frente doing Bizarre Love Triangle or Barenaked Ladies, the Coburn. Um, uh, Jesus, lovers in a dangerous time. I've always wanted to know when you guys were invited to do that. It was kind of at the beginning of your recording career. You hadn't, Gordon wasn't even out yet, I don't believe. Was
No,
that something that you guys chose to do? Did you guys choose that song, or was that song given to you when you
no, that we chose that one because there was this label Intrepid Records, and they were
got it?
putting together this Pick of the Darkness compilation CD, which didn't have a title yet at that time, and they asked us if we would be part of it. And at the time, like, these tribute albums they were all the rage. Everybody was doing them for all kinds of different artists, and I loved them. I loved listening to
Mhm.
people's different interpretations of stuff, and they often would introduce me to different artists or different deep catalog songs for artists. Um, but often the trend was that people would choose the most obscure song they could, kind of deepest album cut, to show that they were a real fan of
Yeah.
Neil Young or whatever else. And so we're like, why don't we do the opposite? We'll choose the song that we remember the video from Much Music for the best, which was Lover's Dangerous Time. It was either that or If I Had a Rocket Launcher were the kind of the two video hits. And so we chose that, and we went in to do it, and we did this arrangement. And it's so funny. I mean, it's done, as you can tell, if you are a musician, you can tell it's done without a click track. It's tempo just goes through the roof. But that was part of the feel of Barenaked Ladies at the time. We started having this kind of acoustic thing that could be really high energy, and we were unconstrained by that. But the guy who was the producer of that record was kept telling us, no, we got to do like straight ahead, four on the floor drum part. We understood that he was trying to get us to play it like the Coburn original version.
Right.
Because I think they thought, because we were kind of the hot band in Toronto at the time, that this was going to be a single, and the way to get it to be a single was to make it sound like the original. And we're like, no. We ended up arguing with him quite vehemently about it until he just let us do our thing, and we had no idea. I mean, we did it in one night, and then shot the video for almost no money, like $6,000 or something like that. And that was at a time when the regular videos might have cost 50,000 or so, and eventually we were making like the video for 1 week, I think, was $300,000 or something like that. And so, this was a big hit in Canada of us in the back of a pickup truck, singing this song, and it really was a huge help for our career.
Mind you, the video for Yoko Ono cost you what, $1, a quarter?
That first video, and then we did a label finance version
Right.
that I think was like $100,000. It's not very good. I mean, it's fine, but it was not. It was $100,000.
Prefer the speaker's corner.
I much prefer that.
With the Who dates wrapped up, going back out on the road with the Steven Page trio, with of course yourself, hence the name of the band, Kevin Fox and Craig Northey, who we've had here on our show, to promote the new record. I've been lucky enough to see you guys perform, so many times with Barenaked Ladies over the years. My favorite memory was with Billy Bragg jumping up on stage at Canada's Wonderland with you guys, because I love him. And then I saw you at Phase One, I believe, when Stunt came out.
Oh, right on.
You guys performed live at the studio, the full album. I also saw you with the Trans Canada Highwaymen at Jackson Triggs, and that was a fantastic show. Have you got, and I've asked Craig this and I've asked Mo this, is there ever going to be a record? Is there ever going to be recordings? Are you guys ever going to get in the studio?
I may not be at liberty to say, but let's say that perhaps there might be something ready to go now. So, but you haven't heard that from me.
I will.
Yeah, we have been working on stuff over the course of the pandemic that I think is well, now it's done. I think now we're just trying to figure out how to release this thing.
Fantastic. I'm glad I asked, and I will deny.
But hopefully next year. I think we need to get figure out whether we're going to put this out ourselves or find a label or that kind of thing.
That's great. The new record is called Excelsior. It's available now in stores on CD and on all the streaming services. I'm waiting until next year, beginning of next year, to get her on vinyl. Thank you so much for being with us, Steven. It was great to talk to you about the new record and about your career. Good luck going forward on the road.
Thanks so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Anytime.
Bye-bye.
Take care.